My son, Oswin, hadn't answered his phone in 2 weeks. That was the fact that sat like a stone in my stomach as I pulled my old Ford pickup onto his street. 2 weeks of calls ringing into the void. 2 weeks of my messages sitting unread. 2 weeks of a creeping, icy dread that had finally, this morning, become unbearable. I was 76 years old. I knew the difference between a busy son and a missing one. This was not Oswin. My son, my only child, would never let me worry. Not like this. I parked at the curb, not in the driveway. A quiet fear made me want to be unseen. The house, a sturdy 2-story brick colonial in a nice suburban neighborhood, looked wrong. The curtains were all drawn, which was unusual for a bright afternoon. Oswin's prize-winning roses were drooping, their heads brown and heavy. A newspaper, yellowed and damp, lay on the porch. My heart, a tired old muscle, began to hammer against my ribs. I walked up the pathway, my hand trembling as I fumbled in my purse for the spare key he'd given me. "For emergencies, Mom," he'd said with a smile. This felt like an emergency. The key slid into the lock, but I didn't need to turn it. The door pushed open with a soft click. It was unlocked. I froze. Oswin was meticulous about security. He would never, ever leave the door unlocked, not with my grandson, Jareth, inside. I pushed the door open, calling his name. "Oswin? Trina? Jareth, honey, are you here?" The only answer was a heavy, stale silence. The air inside was cold and smelled wrong, like dust and something metallic. The living room was a disaster. Cushions were thrown on the floor, a lamp was overturned, and a coffee mug lay shattered by the fireplace, a dark brown stain soaking into the white carpet. My breath hitched. This wasn't just neglect. This was a struggle. I walked into the kitchen, my shoes crunching on something. Cereal. A whole box of it, scattered across the floor, along with milk, forming a sticky, sour-smelling puddle. "Oswin!" I yelled, my voice cracking. I ran up the stairs, my hand gripping the banister. Each step creaked under my weight, amplifying the terrible, oppressive quiet. I checked their bedroom. Empty. The bed was unmade, clothes spilling from an open drawer. I backed out, my pulse roaring in my ears, and turned to the last door. Jareth's room. I pushed it open, my heart in my throat. The blinds were down, casting the room in a gloomy, gray light. His Lego creations sat on his desk, and his superhero posters looked down like silent judges. "Jareth?" I whispered. Then I heard it. A small, dry scuffle. It came from under the bed. My blood ran cold. "Jareth, is that you?" I whispered, taking a step. Another sound, a tiny scrape, like a fingernail on wood. "Who's under there?" I said, my voice rising in panic. I got on my hands and knees, my old joints screaming, and tried to peer into the darkness. I saw nothing. Just a void. But I knew something was there. Something was breathing. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. I scrambled backward, grabbing my phone. My fingers were stiff and useless. I misdialed 911 twice before my thumb hit the right numbers. "My son is missing," I cried to the dispatcher. "The house, it's a mess, and there's something is moving under my grandson's bed." The wait was an eternity. I stood on the porch, my body shaking, until 2 police cars, lights flashing, tore down the street. I led them upstairs, my hand pointing, unable to speak. The lead officer, a tall man named Lowell with kind, grim eyes, knelt. "This is the police," he said, his voice firm. "Come on out, son." Silence. He looked at his partner. On 3. They lifted the bed. I bit my hand to stop the scream. It wasn't a monster or a stranger. It was Jareth. My grandson. He was curled in a tight ball, his knees to his chest. He was so thin, his cheeks hollowed out like a famine victim, his hair matted. His eyes were wide and vacant, staring at nothing. He was clutching a small, crumpled piece of paper. We all just stood there, frozen. Because it was Jareth, alive, but so utterly broken, it was like looking at a ghost. And the first, terrifying question that ripped through my mind was, where are his parents? What could have happened to this family? It all began on a Sunday. My Sunday. For the last 10 years, ever since my husband passed, Oswin and I had our call. 10 a.m. Every Sunday. He'd tell me about his work at the architectural firm, and Jareth would get on the line to tell me a new, terrible joke he'd learned. But 2 weeks ago, the phone never rang. I waited, watching the clock tick. By noon, I called him. It rang, and finally, went to his voicemail. Hey, you've reached Oswin. Leave a message. Oswin, honey, it's Mom. Just checking in. Call me when you get this. I tried to brush it off. My friend, Maribel, from my weekly bridge game, waved her hand when I mentioned it. Oh, Naoma, he's a busy man. And that wife of his, Trina, she probably has him running all over town. He'll call. But I knew my son. And I knew Trina. Trina was difficult. She came from money and never let anyone forget it. My small, tidy home, paid for by my late husband's pension and my old teaching job, was a quaint little box in her eyes. She was a woman who collected expensive things and grievances. She hated that Oswin was so loyal to me, that he still drove out to Meadow Creek to fix my leaky faucet or check my tire pressure. She saw my simple, frugal life as a judgment on her extravagant one. The knot in my stomach tightened. I remembered our last conversation, 3 days before that first missed call. Oswin's voice had been low, strained. Mom, I need to ask you something. I heard Trina's sharp, cutting voice in the background. Oswin, don't you dare. You are not asking your mother for money. Not after everything. There was a muffled sound, and the line clicked dead. I had called back, but it went straight to voicemail. I spent the next few days in a fog of anxiety. I called again. And again. Straight to voicemail. I sent texts. Oswin, please, I'm worried. Just let me know you're okay. The messages remained undelivered. By the 4th day, I was frantic. I called his office. Oswin? Oh, he's taken an emergency leave of absence, the receptionist told me, her voice bright. His wife called it in. A family matter, I believe. A family matter. My blood chilled. I was his family. What matter could possibly involve him, Trina, and Jareth, but not me? The days crawled by. 1 week. Then 10 days. The dread became a living thing, a cold presence in my house. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat in my armchair, staring at the silent phone. Maribel stopped by, her cheerful expression fading when she saw my face. Naoma, you look terrible. Go to him. Just go. That was all the push I needed. On the 14th day, I packed an overnight bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely zip it. I filled a thermos with coffee, got into my old, reliable Ford pickup, and started the 2-hour drive to his house. The autumn leaves were beautiful, all red and gold, but I saw none of it. I just saw Oswin's face as a little boy, running to me with a scraped knee. I saw the strained look in his eyes on our last call. I saw Trina's cold, dismissive stare. And I drove, my foot heavy on the gas, a terrible premonition twisting in my gut. I pulled onto his street, saw the drooping flowers and the dark windows, and I knew. My fear wasn't just in my head. It was real. A mother's intuition is never wrong. The hospital was a blur of bright lights and sharp, antiseptic smells. They had rushed Jareth to the pediatric emergency wing, a tiny, silent ghost on a gurney. I sat in the plastic waiting room chair, my body vibrating with shock. A kind doctor with tired eyes came out. "Mrs. Naoma?" "I'm Dr. Davis." He knelt in front of me. "Your grandson is stable. He's suffering from severe malnutrition and dehydration. He hasn't spoken a word. He's in a state of severe shock. Can you tell us what happened?" I told him what I knew, which was nothing. "I just found him. His parents, they're gone." His face tightened. He told me Jareth would be admitted, that they had specialists, social workers. I just nodded, my mind numb. A few hours later, I was allowed to sit by his bed. He was hooked up to N4, the clear fluid dripping life back into his small body. His eyes were open, but he was staring at the ceiling, unblinking. I held his small, cold hand, my thumb rubbing the back of it. "Jareth, sweetie. It's Grandma. You're safe now. I'm right here." There was no response. Not a flicker. Detective Lowell found me there. He pulled up a chair, his big frame seeming to shrink to match the room's sad energy. "Mrs. Naoma," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I need to ask you some hard questions." He laid it all out. The house was a confirmed crime scene. There were signs of a violent struggle, and blood had been found on the living room carpet. Not a lot, but enough. Your son, Oswin, and his wife, Trina, are officially missing persons. We found her purse, his wallet, both their cell phones, all smashed in the kitchen trash. He paused, letting the horror of that sink in. "You mentioned on the phone, a fight? About money?" My throat closed. I felt like a traitor, but my son was missing. "Our last call," I whispered, the words tearing at me. "I heard Trina, she was angry. He was going to ask me for money. She has a problem, detective. A gambling problem. Oswin confessed it to me months ago. He was trying to get her help. He was paying off her debts. He must have finally cut her off." Lowell's face was grim. "That," he said, "is a very powerful motive." He thanked me and left, his radio crackling with codes I didn't understand. I turned back to Jareth. A nurse had given him a clipboard with paper and crayons. His small hand, skeletal and weak, picked up a blue crayon. He started to draw. His movements were jerky, robotic. I watched, my heart breaking, as an image took shape. It was a crude, terrifying sketch. A big stick figure, with wild hair and a scribbled, angry red mouth. An angry woman. Next to her, a smaller, dark stick figure of a man. And on the ground, another stick figure. "Daddy," he had written above it. And next to them, a bright yellow car. My blood ran cold. He was drawing what he saw. He was drawing his father's assault. As I stared at the horrifying picture, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Naoma? This is Sarah from Meadow Creek National Bank. We're calling about a large withdrawal you attempted to authorize this morning from your online account for $50,000. I dropped the phone. I don't even have online banking. "Ma'am?" she asked. The request was denied, as it was flagged for fraud, but we traced the IP address. It came from your son's home address. She tried to steal her own mother-in-law's money. This is darker than I thought. "Trina," I whispered, the name tasting like poison. She was the only other person on earth who knew about that account. She'd seen a bank statement on my desk once. $50,000, she'd trilled. "Naoma, you're sitting on a little nest egg." I'd told her it was my emergency fund, the money my husband had left me. She just smiled, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. And now, with her husband missing, she had tried to steal it. I called Lowell, my voice shaking with a new kind of rage. It was Trina. She just tried to steal my life savings. I told him about the bank call, the IP address. I could hear him swearing under his breath. This changes everything, Naoma. This isn't just a missing persons case. This is attempted murder, kidnapping, and now grand theft. She's running. His voice was hard. We're escalating this. I want you to stay at the hospital with Jareth. You're both under police protection. Under protection. The words made my skin crawl. I sat by Jareth's bed, the drawing of the yellow car clutched in my hand. He was drawing again, the same picture, over and over. The angry woman. The dark man. The yellow car. Jareth, sweetie, I pleaded, my voice soft. Who is this? Who is in the yellow car? He just shook his head, a tiny, frantic motion, and kept drawing, his crayon snapping with the force. I was failing him. I was failing Oswin. A young nurse, June, came in to check his vitals. She had a kind, freckled face. He's a strong little guy, she said softly, tucking his blanket. You know, when he was brought in, he had this clenched in his fist so tightly, we almost couldn't get it out. We logged it as part of his personal effects. She handed me a small, clear plastic evidence bag. I thought you should have it. My heart stopped. Inside the bag was a single earring. It wasn't small or delicate. It was a large, gaudy piece of costume jewelry, a cluster of fake gold and glittering emerald green stones. I felt the air leave my lungs. I knew this earring. I had bought it for Trina last Christmas, a desperate attempt to find something she'd like. She had unwrapped it, given me a tight, false smile, and said, "How vintage." I'd seen her wear it once, at a family dinner, her expression disdainful. But it wasn't just the earring that made my blood freeze. It was what was on it. Caked in the crevices of the fake gold, matted with a single strand of dark hair, was a dark, reddish-brown crust. Dried blood. My hand flew to my mouth. This was it. This was the proof. This was what Jareth had grabbed, in the middle of the horror. A bloody earring. Jareth is the only witness. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. Lowell, I said, my voice a strangled whisper. I have it. I have the proof. It's an earring. Trina's. And it's covered in blood. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Don't touch anything, he commanded. I'm on my way. I'll have a forensics tech meet me there in 10 minutes. I sat staring at the bag, my mind replaying 1,000 small, cold moments with Trina. Her casual cruelty, her sharp words, her bottomless hunger for more. And now, this. This ugly, bloody earring. It was a symbol of everything she was. Lowell and a woman in a lab coat arrived, their faces grim. They handled the bag with a professional reverence, took my statement about the earring, and left. This is huge, Naoma, Lowell said, pausing at the door. This gives us probable cause for a full-scale manhunt. We'll find her. I was left alone again with the silence, and with Jareth's frantic, silent drawing. The yellow car. The angry woman. The dark man. It was a loop of terror, and I had no idea how to break it. I sat down, my body aching with exhaustion, and just held my grandson's hand. Jareth, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I'm so sorry. Grandma is here. But I need you to help me. I need you to help me find Daddy. Please, sweetie. Who was with Mommy? Who was in the yellow car? He was rocking back and forth, a low, animal hum coming from his throat. He wouldn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the wall. I was desperate. I pointed to the drawing. Was it the man? The dark man? He shook his head. The lady? The angry lady? He nodded, a tiny, jerky movement. But who else? I looked at the drawing of the yellow car. It was so specific. Who drives the yellow car, Jareth? He stopped rocking. The humming stopped. The silence in the room was absolute. I held my breath. He turned his head, his vacant eyes focusing on mine for the first time. A small, raspy word tore from his throat. Calla. My heart skipped. Who, honey? Who is Calla? Auntie Calla, he whispered, and his face crumpled. Auntie Calla, yellow car. Mommy was screaming. Auntie Calla was screaming. He dissolved into tears, a dry, silent sobbing that shook his entire frame. I pulled him to my chest, my mind reeling. Calla. Trina's sister. A flighty, irresponsible woman who was just as money-hungry as Trina, and who, I suddenly remembered with chilling clarity, drove a bright yellow sports car she couldn't possibly afford. I grabbed my phone, my fingers flying. Lowell! It's Calla. Trina's sister. Jareth said her name. She was there. And she drives a yellow sports car. Find her. The family is involved. This is a conspiracy. How deep does it go? Detective Lowell didn't hesitate. We're on our way to Calla's apartment right now, he said, his voice hard. We'll get a warrant. You stay with Jareth. Lock the door. I'll call you the second I have something. The line went dead. The wait was the worst part. I sat in that hospital room, the door locked, watching my grandson sleep. His face, finally relaxed, looked so small and innocent. How could his own mother, his own aunt, put him through this? My mind was a storm of horrible possibilities. Had they hurt Oswin? Was he gone? Had they taken him somewhere? I paced the small room, my legs aching, my heart feeling like it would burst from my chest. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. It was Maribel, checking in. I told her I couldn't talk. It was the bank, confirming my accounts were frozen. It felt like hours, but it was only 90 minutes later that Lowell called. His voice was tense. We've got her. She's at the station. And she's talking. She's terrified. She's spilling everything, Naoma. Oswin? Did she say where he is? I cried. Just get down here, Naoma. You should hear this. I got Nurse June to sit with Jareth, promising I'd be back soon, and I drove to the precinct, my hands gripping the wheel. They didn't put me in the room. They put me in the dark observation room, behind the two-way mirror. My whole body was shaking. Calla looked nothing like the smug, put-together woman I'd met at family Christmases. Her expensive blonde hair was a wreck, her mascara was smeared down her face, and she was visibly trembling. I didn't do anything, she sobbed. I just helped her. I didn't know what she'd done. Lowell sat across from her, his face like stone. Start from the beginning, Calla. 2 weeks ago. Trina called me, Calla whispered, wringing her hands. She was hysterical. She said she'd had a huge fight with Oswin. She has a gambling problem. A bad one. She owed this guy a lot of money. A loan shark. Her eyes darted to the mirror, as if she could see me. Oswin found out she'd taken out a second mortgage on the house. He was going to call the police, to report her for fraud. He was going to take Jareth and leave. So what happened? Lowell pressed. She called this man, this loan shark. A man named Corbin. She told him Oswin was going to ruin everything. Corbin came to the house. Calla was crying hard now. I got there later. The house was a mess. Trina was just staring. She had this big duffel bag at her feet, full of cash. She said Oswin was gone. She said Corbin took care of it. I didn't ask. I swear I didn't ask. Where did she go, Calla? I don't know. She gave me $5,000 in cash and told me to keep my mouth shut. She left with Corbin. She said they had to lie low, that they were going to collect some more money and leave the country. She said Oswin was gone, and that I had to forget I ever saw her. My knees buckled. Gone. My son was gone. A bag full of cash, a loan shark, and a missing son. This is a nightmare. Gone? What does gone mean? I pounded on the glass, a raw, strangled sound tearing from my throat. Lowell was at my side in an instant, his hand on my arm, guiding me out of the dark room. Naoma, calm down. Gone can mean a lot of things. She's scared. She's trying to protect her sister and herself. We've got an APB out for Trina and this man, Corbin. We've got his name, his face. We'll find them. I felt numb. I drove back to the hospital, my mind a blank, static void. My son was gone. His wife, the mother of his child, had conspired with a violent criminal to what? I couldn't even form the thought. I walked into Jareth's room. He was awake, sitting up in bed, watching cartoons. The sound of a cartoon woodpecker laughing felt like a violation. I sat down, my body heavy, and just watched him. He was all I had left. The small television in the corner of the room was tuned to the local news. I wasn't paying attention until a breaking news banner flashed across the screen. We interrupt this program. We're live from a motel just off the I-95, where police are in a tense standoff with two suspects wanted in connection with a high-profile kidnapping and homicide. My blood turned to ice. My hand fumbled for the remote, turning up the volume. The reporter was crouched behind a car, police cruisers forming a perimeter around a seedy-looking motel. The suspects, the reporter said, her voice tense, have been identified as Trina, and a known loan shark, Corbin. Police believe they are armed and dangerous. They showed a grainy security photo from the motel check-in. It was her. Trina, looking ragged and desperate. And beside her, a man with a cruel, pitiless face and dead eyes. Corbin. I couldn't breathe. It was happening. Right now. I was staring at the screen, my heart pounding, when Jareth made a sound. I turned. He had seen the TV. He was staring at the man's face. His whole body went rigid. His eyes, which had been vacant for days, were suddenly sharp, focused, and filled with a terror so profound it stole my breath. He raised a trembling, skeletal finger, pointed at the image of Corbin, and he screamed. It wasn't a child's cry. It was a raw, primal roar of pure horror. The bad man. The bad man. He hurt Daddy. He hurt Daddy. He remembers. Jareth's memory is back. What did he see? We're so close to the truth. The hospital room exploded into motion. Jareth's screams echoed down the hall, and in seconds, Nurse June and a doctor were bursting in. What happened? What's wrong? Jareth was inconsolable, his body rigid with terror, his eyes screwed shut as he screamed. He pushed Daddy. The bad man pushed Daddy. Daddy fell. Daddy's sleeping. The doctor tried to check his vitals, but Jareth was fighting, his little fists flailing. I grabbed him, pulling him against my chest, rocking him, my own tears blinding me. It's okay, sweetie, it's okay. Grandma's here. The bad man is gone. He can't hurt you. I held him, my heart breaking, as a doctor administered a mild sedative. His screams slowly subsided into choked, gasping sobs. My phone rang, loud and jarring in the sudden quiet. It was Lowell. His voice was breathless. Naoma, we have her. Trina is in custody. Corbin is deceased. He opened fire on my officers. They returned fire. It's over. I sank into the chair, the phone sliding in my sweaty palm. Oswin? I choked out. Lowell, for the love of God, where is my son? Is he gone? There was a long, terrible pause. Naoma. Trina is talking. But her story it's a mess. She's blaming everything on Corbin. She's saying she was a victim, too. I don't care, I spat. Where is my son? That's the thing, Lowell said, his voice heavy with doubt. She says he's not dead. She claims they got scared and hid him somewhere. I didn't wait. I told June I'd be back, and I drove to the station, my mind numb. They put me back in the observation room. Trina was in the interrogation room, her expensive clothes torn and dirty. She wasn't crying. Her face was a mask of cold, calculated indifference. It was an accident, she said, her voice flat. Oswin found out about the money, about Corbin. He was being unreasonable. He said he was going to ruin me. Corbin came. They fought. Corbin just pushed him. Pushed him where? Lowell said. He fell. He hit his head on the coffee table. He was unconscious. And you called an ambulance? Lowell asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. We panicked. Trina snapped. Corbin said we had to get out of there, that Oswin would wake up and call the cops. We needed time. We needed to get the money and go. So you left him there? I whispered to the glass. No, Trina said, and my blood ran cold. We locked him up. To give us time. Just for a day or two, until we could get away. Lowell leaned in, his face dark. Where, Trina? Where did you lock him up? She looked up, her eyes as dead as her accomplices. In the cellar. Under the old tool shed in the backyard. We locked him in. He was fine. Just locked in. He's probably fine. Just hungry. 2 weeks. She left him locked in a cellar for 2 weeks. The monster. Oswin is still missing. The shed? I burst through the door, my voice a roar. You locked him in the shed? 2 weeks ago? Trina actually flinched, her cold mask cracking. Lowell grabbed my arm, but I shook him off. You left him to die. You left him in a hole to starve. He was fine, she shrieked, all pretense gone. He had it coming. He was going to take my son from me. Lowell was already on his radio, his voice barking orders. All units, to the victim's house. The backyard shed. Possible victim trapped in a cellar. Get medical, now. Move! Move! I ran. I ran out of the station, my old legs pumping, and got in my truck. I sped, following the sirens, my vision blurred by tears of rage and a terrifying, fragile hope. He's probably fine. The words echoed in my head. A lie. A monstrous, heartless lie. I got to the house, police cars flooding the street. Officers were already in the backyard, surrounding the old, dilapidated tool shed that Oswin always meant to tear down. I stumbled out of my truck, pushing past a young officer. "It's my son. My son is in there." I saw them. 2 officers were using a heavy crowbar on the floorboards, just inside the shed's rotted door. "There's a trap door," I screamed, my voice raw. She said, "There's a trap door." And then I remembered. Jareth. His drawing. He hadn't just been drawing a random box on the ground next to his father. He was drawing the shed. He was drawing the trap door. He knew. The old wood splintered and cracked. With a grunt, 2 officers heaved the heavy trapdoor open. It slammed back against the wall, revealing a square of pitch-black darkness. A blast of cold, musty air, thick with the smell of mold and something else, something awful, hit us. An officer shone a high-powered flashlight into the darkness. The beam cut through the black, illuminating a small, damp, earthen pit. Spiders. Rags. And a shape. A human shape, huddled in the corner. We all held our breath. The silence was absolute. And then, from the bottom of that dark, terrible hole, a voice. A weak, dry, rasping sound that was barely human, but a sound I would know anywhere. "Mom. He's alive. He's alive." The relief is overwhelming. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the grass, the world spinning, my sobs so powerful they were silent. "He's alive." I heard an officer yell. "Get the medics in here. He's alive." They lowered a backboard. They worked with a gentle, urgent speed. And then, they brought him out. He was a shadow of my son. He was emaciated, covered in dirt and filth, his beard matted to his face. His eyes were sunken in his skull. But those eyes, they were open. And they were fixed on me. "Mom," he whispered again, as they rushed him to the ambulance. The hospital. Again. This time, a different room. A different reunion. I sat in a chair between 2 beds. In one, Oswin, pale and weak, and 4 dripping fluids back into him. In the other, Jareth, who was now awake and aware. When Jareth saw his father, his face crumpled. "Daddy," he whispered. Oswin, his voice a hoarse crackle, held out a trembling arm. "I'm here, Jareth. I'm here. It's okay." Jareth climbed out of his bed and into his father's, and they just clung to each other, 2 survivors, weeping. The full story came out. Trina and Corbin had beaten him. When he fell and hit his head, they thought he was dead. When he stirred, they panicked. They'd dragged him to the cellar and left him to die. They'd locked Jareth in his room, telling him they were going on a trip and that his father was being punished. They'd left him with a few bottles of water and a box of cereal. My brave, terrified grandson had survived on his own, hiding under the bed, until I arrived. Trina's trial was fast. With Corbin dead, Calla's full testimony, and Jareth's brave, clear, and heartbreaking statement, she had no defense. She confessed to attempted murder, kidnapping, and a dozen other charges to avoid a life sentence. She will be in prison until she is an old woman. I sold my little house in Meadow Creek. I sold Oswin's house, that place of nightmares. I took every penny of my savings, the money Trina had tried to steal, and I bought us a new life. We moved 3 hours away, to a small farmhouse on 10 acres of green, rolling hills. The air is clean here. There are no neighbors close enough to see. It's been a year. I'm sitting on the front porch, sipping my tea. The spring air is warm. Oswin, his body strong again, his hair grown back, is in the yard. He's teaching Jareth how to build a birdhouse. The sound of a small hammer tapping, and Jareth's clear, bright laughter, carries on the breeze. My son is quiet. He doesn't talk much about what happened. But he smiles. His eyes are clear. My grandson has nightmares, but he's in therapy. He's healing. We are not what we were. We are scarred. We are wounded. But we are here. And we are free. Thank you for following our story. Never, ever underestimate the strength of a mother or a grandmother. If you are moved, please share this, and may you always cherish the family you can truly trust. And it's my joy when you subscribe that motivate me to give you more stories like this. Thank you.